Hello, this is Christina Wyrick, and welcome to the Off Balance Tele-Summit presented by Dr. Layla Ali and her book, Off Balance, The American Way of Health, a pharmacist's perspective on why drugs don't work. In this Tele-Summit this evening, we will be interviewing people whose story we've captured and shared in her book, and because they have healed themselves from various health conditions of which their issues were not getting resolved through traditional methods of seeing a physician and getting a prescription for drugs. So I have with me this evening Dr. Layla Ali, who is a pharmacist, and again, all of the people that we've been interviewing and that we will interview have healed themselves from health conditions that their doctors could not heal and are part of her book. So we get to hear about their amazing story and journey. So I'm excited to present this evening Peter Bedard. Peter Bedard is an author, speaker, and the creator of Convergence Healing. He has overcome a variety of health conditions and challenges from chronic anxiety to arthritis, asthma, fibromyalgia, depression, sciatica, and he has died and come back to life in a body in severe pain and a mind trapped in fear and a broken spirit, so we'll get to hear about that this evening. Peter was able to help and heal himself and now helps others through his practice and his Convergent Healing program. Dr. Layla, what would you like to share with the audience about what you know about Peter?
Well, I met Peter probably about 10 years ago, and he was doing a mixer up in Hollywood, and I just really liked what he was doing, so I copied him and brought it down here in Long Beach. And his story is just so great on what he's been through and what he's gone through. But what's even better is his book. Like I knew his whole story, but I didn't really even know that he had all that insight on health and healing. So this will be a great interview. I promise that.
Wonderful.
And let's talk about you, Christina. Christina, you're a holistic health consultant. So share what you do.
Yeah, I'll share just high level. It's not about me this evening. You can reach me and find out more about my story on www.joylivedevelop.com. But I am a certified holistic health consultant. I work with people in the transformation for them to reach their health goals, so I support, educate, and coach them through their transformation and in the transformation for them to reach their health goals, whatever those are. I partner with naturopathic doctors, acupuncturists, and other healing, physicians and specialists and other healing modalities so that we can make sure that the individual actually has the support to actually achieve the goals that they're looking to seek. So again, you can find me on my website, find out more about me. But it's not about me tonight, it's about Peter. So let's welcome Peter Bedard. Peter, how are you this evening?
Hey, I'm doing great, thank you. I love being on your show. This is super cool on the summit. It's great.
Yeah, wonderful.
I'm actually chatting with a couple people on the conference call.
Okay, wonderful. Well, so that we have our audience tonight, describe for our audience what your life was like before your accident. I mean, we're going to have to get into we want to know about you and your accident. We have plenty of time. So just describe for our audience what your life was like before.
Oh, well, that's interesting. I've done hundreds of these types of conferences and interviews and television spots and stuff like that. No one has ever asked me what my life was like before this accident that I had. So I had an accident when I was just 17 years old where somebody drove me into the back. They pushed me actually into the back of a parked semi-truck. And my life before that was, it was interesting. It was wonderful and not so great. I was a teenager. I had teenage angst for sure. I was, at the time that I had the accident, I felt that I had finally found my place in the world. And as a teenager, that's a big deal. I had stumbled into a dance studio. I was actually recruited into the dance studio. Somebody saw me as a kid, and I was performing, and they picked me up and dropped me into this school, and I had free scholarships in this school. It was pretty awesome. And I felt like I found my voice. I felt like I found home, that feeling that you get when you're you're in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. And It was amazing. I within a short time of being at the school, I was already being a student teacher, and I was getting out of. My parents signed me out of doing PE in school, so I didn't have to go to my PE classes because I was dancing 4 or 5 hours a night, about 4 nights a week, 4 and 5 nights a week, and I was a young dancer athlete. It was pretty amazing. I loved what I was doing. Now, I also had a lot of anger in me because even though I felt like I had finally found home, it was great in that moment when I walked into the studio, but the rest of my life was a mess. I had a great family. My family was awesome, but I was a little Billy Elliot. My dad was a Marine and my mom was a housewife, and I was this gay boy growing up in the suburbs, and I didn't have anywhere where I felt that I belonged or fit in. So that was life before my accident.
And then there is the accident. So those of us who are listening, and including myself, it sounds like any other individual growing up, and you have this life and you have life experience, and for you found this passion, and it sounds like you're gifted at dancing and everything's going, and life is real, and we have our ups and downs, but then there's this accident. So tell us about it.
So, right before the accident, I felt that I had found myself and I saw my future. I'm 17. I'm in my senior year of school, and I feel like, okay, now I know what I'm going to do. I started dancing when I was much younger, but I felt like I had a trajectory. I felt like I had a purpose, and I knew, where my life was heading. When I had the accident, what had happened was I was actually in a show. I was in a vaudeville show, which was super, super cool because my grandfather, played the banjo and, had some loose affiliation with some vaudeville stuff and things like that when he was younger. And so it was just a cool thing for me to be able to be in the show, but I was underaged to be in this theater because they served beer and wine and stuff like that. And so when they had a cast party, my parents said I couldn't go, so I was pretty angry because I was the good boy. My brother was the one who was doing stuff that was kind of always causing problems in the family, and I was the one that played by the rules. And I obeyed my parents, but I was pissed. So I was driving home. On my moped, and somebody came up behind me out of the blue and pushed my bike into the back of a parked semi-truck. So I jumped out of my body prior to the impact. I got to watch my body and the bike hit the truck and bounce off the truck. And I watched the car drive away, and then I had a whole experience of going to the other side and having my own personal conversation with God. And it was amazing. I like to tell people that death is something to actually look forward to. Not that you need to run to it, or not that you need to hurry it along, but it's an inevitable part of life. And that death is amazing and beautiful, and there are not enough descriptive adjectives that are about beauty and bliss to describe the experience of being on the other side, of crossing over and dying. It is the most joyous, happy, beautiful, amazing, incredible, blissful experience. And when I was on the other side, one of the reasons why I believe in accidents is because we do have free will. And when I was on the other side, there was nobody there to greet me. And when somebody finally showed up, there was a sort of sense of confusion, like, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. And when I was told that I had to leave, I said to God, or whomever it was that I was talking to, I had a few expletives that I won't say here, but I used the F word, and I told God to F off. And the next thing I knew, I was back in the world, looking down at my body that was splayed out in the middle of the street.
And I'm going to jump in right now because you said something that's very, very profound. I've thought about it. I've heard, other people have experiences, out-of-body experiences, some as a result of accidents, some, actually being asleep and looking at themselves saying, I've seen myself, I'm outside of my body, I'm trying to get back in my body and wake myself up. So it's actually very profound that you actually jumped out of the body, like, the mind, body, spirit, right? We know that we're these metaphysical beings. So you're out of this body, you had this accident, your body's, like you said, back into a parked truck, so it's wrecked, and then you have this experience on the other side. Your timing, it's like the timing, it almost sounds like, nope, your timing isn't timed right, so you're going back, right? So you're back in the body. So tell us about that. You're back in the body. I'm assuming like you went to the hospital and all this. So give us a little bit more, and then I'll go into some more questions for you.
Well, there's a lot more to that story, but just to pull the highlights out of it was that I didn't want to go back in my body. As a kid, like all the stuff I told you prior to my to the near-death experience, I felt very like I wasn't welcomed. Like I didn't know where to be. I didn't know. I didn't have my place outside of the dance studio. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I didn't feel like I belonged in my culture, in my area, in the suburbs, in my family, in my school, in the church group that my family belonged to. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere, and I didn't feel like I had home. Dance was the only sense of home, but when I died, then I really felt like home. And when I was told I had to leave, I always felt like I was getting kicked out of home. And so when I came back, I didn't go back into my body right away. I actually remember having an experience of looking at my body and thinking, having a conscious thought of, oh, this is interesting, because I wasn't in the pain. I wasn't in the physical situation. I was above that situation. So there's a consciousness of myself that was observing my body in this situation. And I remember thinking, I guess this is how ghosts are made.
Oh,
because
boy.
I'm not going back in there. I do not want to go back in that body. And if I'm not on the other side, I'm not in heaven or whatever that place was, and I'm not in the physical realm, I'm not in that physical body, I guess this is how ghosts are made. And I watched them put my body on the stretcher, put me in the ambulance, close the doors, and drive away. Now, the next memory I have is actually waking up in my body in the hospital. And I was very angry. I was very upset. That anger that I had about not being able to do what I wanted to do in the world, and then being thrust into the back of a semi-truck, and then losing how I knew how to exist in the world, that anger just really took hold in me. And that anger continued for many, many years. Yeah, I had this cascade of pain, I call it, that went from, I shattered in the accident itself, I shattered my left knee, I split my right wrist open, I lost all the nerves in my right hand, I cracked my 5 vertebrae, I had undiagnosed brain damage, I had to learn how to walk again, I had bone-on-bone contact in that knee, I couldn't go back to dancing even when I tried, I had fibromyalgia and arthritis and asthma and bronchitis and sciatica. I came close to dying 4 times after that, which is common for people who have had near-death experiences when they're young. So I severely dehydrated. My white blood cells attacked my red blood cells. My hemoglobin split and was shutting down my organs. So in essence, I was a mess.
Wow.
And I had to heal myself.
Yeah, so what treatments and prognosis? Because listening to this, right, I mean, I can guess, but what treatment and prognosis? I mean, the physicians and your doctors, what did they tell you? What was your life going to be like?
Well, I believe truly that had I followed the allopathic Western path. Now, kudos to the doctors. I balance a fine line between Western medicine and holistic alternative therapies. I tend to, lean into the holistic, but I love the diagnostics and the skills of the allopathic world. So the doctors were amazing at putting my body back together. I had little tiny pieces of bone that my knee was literally shattered, and they literally glued all of those pieces of bone back together. They glued them and pinned them and nailed them, and they really literally rebuilt my leg, like a half of my leg. Nice. That's an amazing feat.
Yes.
Unfortunately, after that, the doctors didn't have much for me. Every time I would go in for a complaint or something that was going wrong, they wouldn't really know what to do. They would prescribe a few different drugs. They would say you could try this or that. They would suggest another surgery. They would, want to give me some sort of physical therapy or something of that sort. They would want to replace my knee at some point. All different types of stuff like that. But nothing that they really offered me was, in my opinion, a valid solution. They were just sort of Band-Aids. And I didn't want to put a Band-Aid on it, but I didn't know what else to do. And so I suffered in pain, in excruciating pain for many, many years. And I was quite poor at the time, living from paycheck to paycheck. And suddenly somebody would say something to me like, hey, I met this healer or this acupuncturist or this alternative doctor or this DO or whatever it was. And I would take every penny I had and I would go and try out that person's skills. And so I started to heal myself very slowly because I was only doing one thing at a time when I could afford it. But I started to make progress and I started to heal myself. And it took quite a while. That wounding, and I say this with my clients, that wounding was on all levels of my being. It was physical in my body, of course, with all the broken bones and the things that had happened to me, especially, and the subsequent things that had happened. There was a physical body element to it. But there also was a mind and a thought element. My mind had been hijacked by fear. My mind was constantly in panic and worry, and how I was going to how was I going to pay for my bills, and how was I going to survive, and was I going to be able to get out of bed the next day because I was in so much pain. So my brain had gotten completely taken over by the pain. And then my heart, I had a broken heart. How I had perceived myself in the world was ripped away from me. How I knew how to be in the world. As this performer, as this dancer, as this person that expressed himself through movement, I didn't know how to exist anymore. And my healing had to take place on each of those levels. And that's something I consciously do with my clients, which is why I call my practice convergence. Convergence is a coming together. And it's a coming together of healing on multiple levels, whether it's a body level, a mind level, or a spirit level.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump into that, and I'm going to ask that question. I have a few other questions I want, but so going through all of this, right? You hit like a bottom, right? You hit a bottom, and when did you hit a bottom, and then you shot back up, or was it the yo-yo, bottom up, right?
Yeah. Well, the proverbial bottom for me lasted for about 20 years plus. So I was in chronic pain, and I would get better, and then I would fall back down. And it was a steady climb, I would say. I never went as bad as that time where I actually died, but as my body healed, my heart didn't necessarily heal. Or as my heart finally did start to heal, my mind was still overtaken by all of that obsessive thinking and that fear. So, you could have several different graphs, really, and look at them and say, well, I would maybe up in one area but down in another area. And it wasn't until I started consciously working on all three levels of my existence simultaneously, it wasn't until then that I really started making big leaps in my healing.
So share with us your three levels. Tell the audience, what are your three levels? What do you
Sure.
What do you do? Okay.
Sure. So if I'm working, let's say one of my clients is a football player, and I'm working with him, and he racked up his knee or something like that, right? There's that physical pain. There's the mental pain of the panic of what's going to happen with the season. How am I going to pay for that $14 million house I just bought? And there's that broken heart pain of this guy has been, training as an athlete for the majority of his life, and is he ever going to be able to do that again? And so I had to take that approach for myself, and part of my practice is to invite people to make friends with their pain and even learn to love the part of them that is in pain and to redefine the relationship with that part. I don't care if it's a part of your body that you're quote-unquote disgusted with because you think it's fat or ugly. That is a pain. I don't care if it's a tumor that's a 4-stage cancer. I don't care if it's anxiety or depression. We do work around redefining our relationship with that part that is in pain and learning how to love it, learning how to give it love. Because I know that when I feel love, I can do anything. And I know that's true for these parts of us. We abuse these parts of us all the time. We speak to ourselves so horribly that if it was a person, they'd get a restraining order against us.
No, gosh, that's the truth. That's the truth, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yet we say awful things to ourselves. We say to these parts of us that are hurting and wounded, we say, I hate you, I'm embarrassed with you, I'm frustrated with you, I want to throw you away, I want to cut you out, I want to drug you, I want to poison you, I wish you would leave, that type of stuff. And all that does is compound the pain. So when we can actually switch that dialogue, switch that conversation, and we could actually bring love into that part, the miracles happen. I've seen it so many times. So that's the beginning process of my work. Then we'll have these conversations with the part, and we learn to listen differently. And so we'll have a conversation. We'll ask the part on that physical level what it needs in order to heal. We'll ask the part, on that spiritual level, that heart level, we'll ask the part on the mind thought level. And because the way we've been thinking is often contributing to the pain. Think of it this way. Think of the part that's hurting as a 17-year-old rebel. And everybody's wagging their finger at him, right? The principal of the school, the teachers, their friends, their family members. They made a mistake. They messed up, whatever it is. They did something that wasn't cool. And everybody's telling them, you need to fix this. And they're probably saying, this is how you need to fix it. And they're wagging their fingers at him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nobody bothers to stop and go to that 17-year-old and say, hey, you messed up. You're hurting. You're in pain. How do you want to fix this?
Yeah.
And when we can stop and go to the parts of us that are hurting, that are in pain, and we respect them, and we love them, and we speak to them with a loving kindness, and then we say, you know what, the doctors are telling me one thing, my family's telling me something else, my fears are telling something else to the part that's hurting. What if I stop, set all those things aside, and I just listen to the part itself? With my knee, for example, when I turned 39, when I was a kid and I had the accident, the doctors told me that I'd never be able to walk again, and if I could walk, I'd have to have my knee replaced by the time I was 40. Now, when I was a kid and they told me that, I was in panic mode. My survival experience was on full tilt, I'm right. And so those words are very much like hypnotic suggestions. And the doctors told me that they're an authority. They told me this experience, and I proved them wrong because I did all kinds of things. But then by the time I turned 40, my knee blew out on me just before my 40th birthday. And I knew that there was nothing wrong with my knee. I knew that that was my body doing what it was told to do in a state of trauma.
Very powerful. Very
powerful.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I pulled back, and I let the doctor schedule the surgery, and then, I did that type of thing, but I put it off for several weeks. And I said, all right, knee, this is what we're going to do. And I just started talking to my knee. And in a way, I started visualizing it and tuning into it, the feeling of it, listening with my subconscious mind, which is images and sound and spontaneous thoughts and stuff of that sort. Mm-hmm. And so I said to my knee, knee, what do you need on that physical level to feel better? Because I don't know what to do for you. The surgery doesn't feel right, but I can't do anything. I'm laid up. I can't get out of bed. I don't know what to do. What do you need? And I had an immediate picture of myself walking. And I thought, well, I don't know how to do that because I can't even stand on that leg, but I'm going to try. So I started hopping, and I started using a crutch, and I started doing things. The doctors told me not to do that type of thing, but I listened to my body's own knowledge and wisdom. And I started walking, and the more I walked, the more my leg healed. It still hurt, but it started to heal. Wow. And then I said to my knee, I said, what do you need on this level of thought? Because I'm in fear. I'm in panic. I'm thinking all these frightening thoughts about having my knee replaced when I'm 40 and knowing the statistics of how often you have to have your knee replaced and losing my leg height and having one leg out of balance with the other and all that type of stuff. I was in panic mode, and so my knee actually said, will you back off? Like, I really got this impulse that I had to stop thinking from fear. And so I said, well, what do I think? And my knee said nothing.
Oh,
now,
boy.
I could have,
How about that?
right, and I could have looked at that and said, oh, I'm not supposed to, what, it's not giving me anything, it's not telling me anything, but it was actually telling me to think of nothing. In other words, no thing, mindfulness, meditation, right through there. And so I learned to discipline my thoughts because I realized that my thoughts have a huge impact upon my body.
So convergence healing. So let's talk about that. Convergence healing, because I'm hearing it, and it's and I can hearing your words and put the picture in my mind, and I have a concept. But share with us in the audience convergence healing, because it sounds like that's what was going on. So what is that, and how do you do that?
Well, that is the convergence, one of the convergence healing processes that I developed for myself to heal myself and that I now use with my clients. So it was about asking those questions and learning to listen and redefining the relationships with the parts of you and accepting the pain and moving on. There's a big thing about acceptance. When we can come to a place of acceptance, and people think that acceptance means that it's okay. Acceptance just means it is what it is. It's not giving your stamp of approval. I had to practice acceptance that somebody killed me. I had to eventually practice forgiveness for myself, not that other person. But I had to bring all of this stuff together. And I had to work on myself in these multiple levels at the same time. So the walking was part of it, right? Going to somebody to learn meditation was another part of it. Having my mind learn how to relax and de-stress, so doing some sort of therapy, that was another part of it. On the spirit level, finding that connection with the divine, with the universe, with my highest self, that was part of it. My highest self, when I said, what do I need to do in order to heal my knee, the first thing it told me was go pull weeds. And I judged that as really stupid. I judged that as some sort of random stupid thought, like, what is that, whatever. And I was in so much pain that I just resigned myself and I said, what the hell, I'm just going to go do it. Now, mind you, I couldn't stand on one leg, so that leg, I'm on the ground with one leg splayed out in front of me, and I'm trying to move around pulling weeds in my garden and just prune things and clean up my garden. And I realized after about 20 minutes of doing that I had no pain and that I felt better.
Wow.
I literally forgot about my pain. So the convergence process is about having these conversations, redefining your relationship, bringing in other types of therapy that go on simultaneously. I often call it my healing cocktail. Instead of a cocktail of different drugs, it's actually a cocktail of different holistic practices that are all combined together, working on the multiple levels of the individual and creating that wellness.
Wonderful. Wow, that's I mean, this is real truth here. This is some really powerful truth, and it is, and I'm hopeful that the audience, you're listening in, and you probably have some questions. You'll be able to ask questions in a little bit, but there are some examples that you listed in the book. Can you share just a few of them?
Sure. So I've worked with people, because this process is so universal, it's not about cancer, it's not about anxiety, it's not about depression, it's about building a different relationship with yourself and using a very simple, straightforward process to create wellness. And so people have come to me with lots of different situations. I helped a gentleman die once and go through that process of moving on and crossing over. I've helped people overcome cancers. I've helped a lot of people in my practice right now are people that just have a lot of anxiety. They have huge amounts of anxiety, and that anxiety affects them through sleep issues, through like insomnia types of things, through obsessive compulsive disorders, all that type of stuff. So I have one woman that I write about in the book who had been gang raped. And literally, I was given one session with her. She was from out of town. It was a friend of a friend of a friend's. They brought her in to see me. I did a little bit of a longer session with her, but she had a horrible experience where she was gang raped. What an awful thing. And she was shutting down. She wasn't functioning. She had 3 children, and she was barely able to even get out of bed, not even take care of herself and her children. She was about to lose her children if nothing changed for her. And with one session of talking to the part of her that was so angry, that was so frightened, we were able to work through this experience. And, it wasn't like she was 100% healed, but she was able to get herself in a place where she could forgive herself. She could regain her trust in the world and the universe and go back to being a mom.
Right.
I had one guy who was an alcoholic, who had a severe drinking problem, and the only way he could actually function at his job was to drink. And we were able to, in one session, have him stop drinking, and he stopped drinking for 30 days. He picked up a drink, drank half that drink, was able to put it down, called me, we did another session. As far as I know, he's never drank since. I've had people with cancer do similar things. If anybody's listening that has something chronic, I have a process that my cancer patients really taught to me, and it's something that I like to share with people. I call it positive denial. So it's knowing what the doctors tell you. It's knowing what you feel like. It's that one of my cancer patients, knowing they have 4-stage cancer and getting out of bed and feeling horrible and losing their hair or whatever they're going through with the cancer. And saying, their family telling them, they're digging their grave, basically, and that kind of stuff, right? They have all kinds of evidence about how sick they are. And what we do with this concept of positive denial is we take all of that evidence and we put it in the corner. It's not about being ignorant. It's not about being stupid. It's about saying, I have a choice. I can continue to live my life and keep creating and contributing to that evidence. Or I could set it in the corner and I could live differently for the time that I have. And I've seen people do one of two things. When they practice this positive denial and they set all of that crap, all that pain, all that hurt, all those beliefs, all those fears, and they set that in the corner and they turn around and walk a different direction, I've seen them do two things. They either die happily because they're living their life in a way that is happy and joyous and they're not engaged in all the pain and the suffering.
Right.
Or their cancer goes into remission.
Yep.
Either way, positive denial is pretty amazing.
Wow. So there's physical, there's emotional, there's mental, there's all these various types of pain. And
Yes.
It's very interesting, as I mentioned, we've been having these interviews with everyone in the book, and this is now I think we're on day 3. And as I mentioned before, the audience, there's these you're hearing all these different stories, different illnesses, different issues, but there's some underlying commonalities, this whole metaphysical, holistic approach to healing, right? And when you say, and I think you mentioned something that was really, really important, Peter, when you said, that the person didn't really, cure or heal, but it's the process of healing. It's
Yes.
a process. It's not a masking a symptom. It's not a putting a Band-Aid on top of it. It's actually allowing it to open up and, like, you cut your leg or you cut yourself, and then at some point you want the Band-Aid off so it can heal itself, and it gets a scab, and the scab falls off, and you might have a little scar, but your skin is back to being quote unquote normal. So that's the kind of way to think about it. How would you articulate that, this whole journey?
Yeah, I would say pain is our greatest teacher. And pain will call you into your greatness. So if anybody out there is listening starts to look at their pain in a different way, probably starts to say maybe even find some gratitude, as silly as that may sound to some people, for the pain. I'm grateful that somebody killed me, because now I have all this experience and knowledge in how to heal. And I help thousands of people all the time get their lives back. Pain, the example is the pain of being human trafficked, right, and being sexually abused can call someone into their greatness, where they stand up and they become an advocate for childhood rights, and they become an advocate for freedom, and they fight against that sexual slavery, and they become their greatest self because of the pain. Pain is something, sure, I'm not encouraging people to welcome, to say, hey, bring it on.
No way.
But I am saying,
no way.
Exactly. But when pain comes into life, and life is painful, and when pain comes into life, just birth is painful. So when we have pain in pain situations, if we can look at that pain as a potential gift, that it's calling us to do something, to be someone greater than we were, that the pain is our teacher, then oftentimes the pain can go away quicker, because we're learning the lesson that it came to teach us.
Very, 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 very powerful. So, in your practice, do you work with everybody, or do people come to you for different reasons?
I tend to work across the board. I tend to be more of a general practitioner, but I do have a specialty. So,
okay.
People, I put myself out there as I work a lot with addiction and anxiety and chronic conditions, right? I work a lot with anxiety and chronic conditions. Anxiety is a chronic condition, right? I work a lot with those types of things. But people come to me because they're like, well, if you can work with somebody that has anxiety issues, then you can certainly work with me. If you work with somebody that was struggling with addiction or cancer, then you can absolutely help me. Sure. And so I have my focus. My focus is I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of self-starters. I work with a lot of people that are very creative Hollywood types, and they have extreme anxiety issues, and they lost their way, or they don't know, what they're working for anymore. Mm. And I work with a lot of people who have been in, say, sobriety. And I don't necessarily mean sobriety with addiction, but who have, maybe sobriety could be something like somebody who's dealt with chronic pain for 20 years, right? They're not engaged in that addiction and that high level of pain anymore, but they're still having chronic conditions in their life. And so those are the majority of the people that I work with. But like I said, people come to me from all over. I've had people fly in. I have people drive 4 or 5 hours to come see me. I have people that I Skype with. It's pretty awesome. I'm very blessed. I'm very, very blessed.
Wonderful. So for those of you who are listening, Peter, how would people reach you? Can you share your website or ways for people to reach you?
Sure. I have a pretty significant online presence, so people can find me in many different ways. They can hear some of my lectures and even see some interviews and other things that I've done. They can find me on YouTube at Convergence Healing if they just search for Convergence Healing. They can find my podcast. My podcast is on SoundCloud and Xtube. That's hilarious. There's a little slip. Xbox. It's on SoundCloud and Xbox and Stitcher and iTunes and Google Play, and at Reverie.tv. They're my production partner. They can just search for Convergence Healing on any of those platforms. They can find me on my website, just convergencehealing.com. They can find my healing teas at convergencehealingteas.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, all under Convergence Healing.
Wonderful. Convergencehealing.com, and then Google and YouTube, and Convergence Healing is really what we're going after, and we know it's you, Peter, right?
Yes, exactly. And my name is Peter, out there too. So if somebody just
Peter,
searches Peter Bedard.
What do you do on your podcast? Do you help people on your podcast, or you? work with
Yeah,
other
my
practitioners?
podcast is, I call it Healing Talk Solutions for Creating a Joyous Life. And so I have people that are either practitioners or people who have healed themselves. So, I had I had a woman on not too long ago who healed herself from, like me, healed herself from a pretty debilitating disease and now is a coach. She's a life coach, and she goes around helping other people, reclaim their lives. I've had chiropractors and doctors, alternative type of people that are, maybe medically trained, but their passion is, holistic healing. So it's all focused on mostly holistic. Every now and then I'll have somebody who's allopathic based, but they're doing something holistic or something integrative. And it's really about helping people with solutions for creating a life of joy. Because oftentimes when we're in pain, we lose our joy. And joy is something that happens on the inside. Happiness is conditional. Joy is something on the inside, and joy is something that can be cultivated no matter where you are or what you're doing or how you're feeling.
And I second that. That's the name of my business. It's Joyous Living and Development, but it's really Joy, Live, Develop, and exactly, it is cultivated on the inside. It's a state of being.
Exactly.
Happiness is fleeting. Joy is a state of being.
Happiness is great. I love happiness.
It's great. We all love happiness, but when you remain in joy, you can also be happy.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Layla, anything else you want to ask Peter or have Peter share before we open it up to our audience? We have about 5 minutes left.
I think we can go ahead and see if there's any questions here.
Okay.
Let's see what we got. I'm going back on my laptop to get it powered up and to tune into the group online too.
Good.
Okay, those of you who are listening, we have about 5 minutes left. If you have any questions for Peter, please don't be shy. Go ahead while he's here, or if you're going to be shy, make sure you reach out to him on the various different channels that he mentioned.
Yeah, and they could also type it in. I'm right on the website.
Hi there, Peter. This is Beth.
Hey, Beth, how are you?
Good, because of you.
So good to have you on.
So
how are you doing?
To tap in, and I so appreciate this whole production that you all are doing on alternative healing. And I do want to underline something that's was very helpful to me. I woke up in the middle of the night after having some disastrous news about my neck and my ongoing scoliosis, and I heard Peter on the radio next to my bed, which I kept on most of the time because I would wake up continuously in pain and in fear. And that night I heard Peter talking, and the next day I went out and got your book, and Amazon had it on my doorstep in hours. And and you have, and it is an ongoing process. So it's so lovely to hear you sharing this, because I keep thinking about maybe there's somebody else that was like me, had already talked to my minister about suicide, had already thought, no, I can't go through one more surgery and all the side effects. And here I am sleeping at night and talking with you, and did not have the surgery and have been living joyfully. Yeah.
Yeah, and Beth, you created an incredible miracle for yourself. Can I share some of that story, Beth?
Please.
So Beth came in. Beth actually saw me at one of my book signings, and she came up to me, and I agreed to work with her. And, again, this is a convergence. So Beth and I worked on a lot of the sort of emotional thinking, sort of the mental, emotional experiences around where she was going, what she was doing, what her experience was like in her body on the scoliosis, and what emotions may have been trapped in that experience of scoliosis. And then I sent her to a chiropractor that specialized in a type of chiropractic. And that combination of her, again, the convergence of her working on the emotional, spiritual side of her pain and getting the physical side addressed by someone who specialized in that, was able to help Beth avoid, I mean, that last time I saw you, you looked almost completely, if not completely balanced, you know, that you weren't off.
It's amazing. Yeah, the first time since I was 11, which was many, many years ago. And like you, I was told that I would be dead in my 30s. And I'm twice that now. And
Yay! That's
beautiful. Yay, Beth, good thing you didn't believe that, right? Thank heaven.
Right.
Well, but like Peter was saying, because I had been told that by experts, I was with someone. I'm in medical journals for my scoliosis. My scoliosis is in medical journals, not me. And and so when I got to my 30s and had this wonderful surgery, I thought, oh, okay, that's great. But nobody told me that wonderful surgery, which I'm like Peter, it was awesome, and they did remarkable things.
Wonderful.
Yes. But my body also continued to develop above the spinal rod and below the spinal rod, and I still didn't know how to celebrate this miracle of body.
You said it continued to do what?
It continued to curve and decompensate.
Oh, okay.
And so meeting Peter gave me a chance to start finding ways to grieve that my body didn't do what my ego thought it should do.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly, right?
So can you share with us the healing process? Was it a few sessions and was it talking to your body? Like,
yes. In sessions with Peter, we, addressed that fear. He helped me to just look at it but not be overwhelmed by it, to kind of step away from it as I viewed it through hypnosis and through guided imagery, and to see how I could, get through another day, another night.
And Beth, can I mention that? And again, you caught me. I don't want to go too personal, but there was a very big experience of self-value and self-worth that was connected with the experience of the scoliosis.
Absolutely. And having lived with it since I was 11, you can only imagine what that meant to an 11-year-old girl with a family that was not supportive and even abusive. And so I was supposed to hide my scoliosis and pretend it wasn't there while I was walking around. And, we know about bullying and we know about teasing at campuses. Well, try that in a Milwaukee brace or a plaster cast. And I can guarantee you, what gets drummed into people. So for the first time in my life, my neck is even, my hips are even. I have radiology proof that my spine is not where they said they wanted to do a 6-hour surgery on me 2 years ago that would probably take away my voice, and I do sing, and would probably take away my ability to drive a car because I wouldn't be able to turn my neck, and so many things. And so not to go back and celebrate the fear and the medical prognosis, but to celebrate that Peter and other healers are bringing to us possibilities that can be documented even, if need be, and can be enjoyed.
How long were you in pain, and how long have you been out of pain?
Oh, I won't say that I'm out of pain. I talk to my pain, and I tried to listen to what my body needs, and I tried to solve that first. I was in pain, remarkable pain. Scoliosis and bones-on-bone pain is really hard. And the fear made it worse because every time I had pain, and I wouldn't take pain pills, and I wouldn't take alcohol, and I was very, very diligent about all that because I know what those solutions can lead to, especially for somebody who comes from a family of addiction.
Okay.
So I had to tough it out, and Peter knows I'm a tough gal, and I can do things, and I have a wacky sense of humor.
And this is fantastic, and this is great that we have you call, and you said Beth, yes?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's great that you're a part of this evening and can actually be a witness to hear this, because we hear you speaking, Peter, and we know your story is real and everything you're speaking of is a reality, right? And then to hear someone else say, hey, I got your book and I've done this, it's really powerful. So thank you, everyone, for listening this evening and for joining us this evening and knowing that there are possibilities. Please join us again. We'll be live again tomorrow. And this is being recorded, so those of you who are here tonight, if you haven't, go on the website, sign up, and make sure you can get these recordings. And then one more time, Peter, convergencehealing.com. Spell that for our audience.
CONVERGENCE, healing, HEALING, convergencehealing.com.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us and letting us know that you're there and you're practicing and that there's an alternative and that it's possible. And Beth, for you joining and calling in and just sharing part of your story, I'm so overwhelmed with everyone now. I need to go on their website and do my research and work on myself. I'm one of those where I help others, but we're always working on ourselves, and working on ourselves allows us to help others as well. So,
right, yes. And just to say that people can still find my book. It's on Amazon and iBooks and iTunes and IndieBound and Barnes & Noble. They can find the book through all of those places.
And what's the name of the book?
Same thing, Convergence Healing, and it has a tagline of healing pain with energetic love.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Dr. Layla, is there anything else you would like to add before we call it an evening?
I just want to add I love his book. So thank you, guys. I think that was great info.
Thanks,
all right,
Layla.
Wonderful. All right, thank you all for joining us. Join us tomorrow for Off Balance Tele-Summit, Day 4.
Great. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
guys.